Welcome to the Teachers Talkin' podcast, hosted by Dustin and Ghazali Abdul Wahab. In this podcast, we discuss all things education and teaching, from innovative teaching methods to challenges to strategies and much, much more. In this discussion or roundtable-based podcast, we bring in educators from all around the world to talk about a variety of education topics so that we can support as many teachers as possible. We want this to be a place of inspiration, personal and professional development, and simply a place where we can elevate education together. Welcome to Teachers Talkin'. Episode of Teachers Talkin'. I am Dustin, as always, here with my co-host Ghazali, and we are absolutely thrilled to bring you another insightful discussion. Today, we welcome Chitisha. I was practicing the name, and then I'm going to say it wrong right off the bat. Chitisha Gunnoo. She is a PhD candidate, a 21st century educator, and a learning development consultant. Chitisha is passionate about creating education that's aligned with Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs. And that's why this episode is called Culturally Responsive Teaching, Building Bridges in Diverse Classrooms. We're going to focus on answering the big question: how can educators connect with diverse student populations through culturally responsive teaching? But before we dive into our discussion, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in education, and your work as learning and development consultant?
So you just talk a little bit about me. Yes, I am a PhD candidate at the University of Mauritius. So I'm based in Mauritius, which is like a very small dot next to Africa. So we are kind of mixed origin here, roots from a lot of diverse country. We have our roots from India. We have our roots in Africa. So that's what we kind of bring in the classroom and in the society. Now, a little bit about me. Besides being a PhD candidate, so my research is about SDG-aligned education, 21st century skills, and also the part about implementing digital transformation in institutions. Okay, so that's about my research. But not only that, so I have been in the education sphere. So I have been teaching at secondary as well as tertiary levels for quite some time now. So it's been 8 years that I'm in this sector, and I've been working within departmental ministries. So not only that, but also teaching at the secondary level in as facilitators for master's, postgraduate levels as well. So there's a lot of things that we do here in Mauritius, which is kind of maybe not really the same, not really common in all different countries. So one aspect of that is that we start with culturally responsive teaching at a very young age. So it starts at kindergarten at our level. So because we have that a lot of diverse cultures in the country, we have multi-cultural perspectives, such as Indians, we have Muslim peoples, we have Chinese people, and we have some people who are like from other countries. Okay, so we have a lot of immigrants as well. So there is like this race towards culture, which we kind of blend in our institutions. Not only that, but also around the level where they reach school age and they start working. So it's already blended in the society.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, I feel that Mauritius and Singapore is pretty similar in that sense. We are also a little dot on the map, and we are also very culturally diverse. We have Indian, Malay, Chinese, Eurasians, and So I'm really interested to know how your country, how do you put this melting pot together? You know, how do you make things work and in education, and what exactly is culturally responsive teaching? Maybe you can tell our audience that.
So thank you, Ghazali. Actually, yeah, you're right, because in Mauritius we call ourselves the mini Singapore, or sometimes mini India. Okay. Actually, how do we inculcate this part about culturally responsive in our institutions? Okay. So first of all, what do we feel about cultural responsive teaching and learning? So it's about understanding each student's disciplinary and where they come from. Okay, so we start doing that from knowing their backgrounds. Okay, so actually in Mauritius it's very easy, because each different cultures have different um, types of names. Can I put it like that? So we already know to which culture that student belongs to. So the thing about blending this thing about culture in the classroom, for instance, we have to be very careful, okay? Because we don't want anything. Don't want anyone to feel like they are being marginalized or stuff like that. Okay, we do have minority cultural groups in Mauritius. So finally, I'm one of the minority groups, but we don't feel really leftovers. Okay, because the thing is that we have already started with initiating a curiosity of each different cultures in the classroom. So from a very young age, myself, I have, people say, okay, you belong to that kind of culture. So I'm curious, what they do. Okay, so you do this kind of festival. So I want to know, why do you do that? Okay, what is the purpose of doing that? So we get questions like that, where we feel like we are valued in the class. Okay, now how do we teachers, okay, because I have been teaching also, so how do we as teachers bring this in the classroom? How do we implement this? Well, how do we do that is we do have a tradition in Mauritius. It starts possibly at the kindergarten level itself. So where we have cultural exchange programs. Okay, we have it at kindergarten, and then because at primary and secondary level, the framework of teaching and learning in the country is more exam focused. We don't put a lot of focus on the cultural aspect of that. But then it comes again in the tertiary level. Okay, we have days dedicated for cultural exchange, where teachers and students work together to bring their culture to the table. Okay, so they have like this expo that they do. Okay, so if I belong to that culture, so we are going to expo our traditions, our different types of for example, food that we eat, or dress that we wear, etc. Regarding teaching and learning, so it's also interesting to know that we do have like quizzes, okay, cultural quizzes that we implement. So okay, so there's kind of these we are trying to guess, okay, so which culture is from these diagrams, or from these different festivals that we have. And to know that we have a lot of festivals in Mauritius, because we have so many cultures, so each one have their own holidays. So it's kind of fun, okay, because everyone like, okay, uh, because there is this festival, this gathering today, so next day you have to tell us about this festival. So it's kind of an enrichment phase that we go through. We learn a lot about other people's, what they are doing, etc. So sharing of information, and at some point in time we tend to know more about the other people's culture than ourselves, because we mingle so much among each other. So that's become part of our routine. Yeah.
More about the difference between this culturally responsive teaching and the traditional methods of teaching. How does it differ?
So I think that the traditional method of teaching, which we do implement at the primary and secondary levels, because we are more focused on exam part and working on the curriculum, etc. So we don't really bring that aspect of the individual. Okay, so that is the main difference between the culturally responsive teaching, which I find, because when we are trying to implement the culturally responsive teaching and learning aspect into the classroom, each people has his own identity. Okay, so he knows that he's very different from each other, so he brings his own experiences to the table, more like when we are doing the traditional method of teaching. So he don't think of himself like a different individual, but he think of himself as same as his own, as his different friends. Okay, so that is the main aspect, because there's not much focus on the person as his own identity. Okay, so good for you to mention that, because during the cultural exchange, we also have the part about self-reflection that we do. Okay, so think of yourself as that person belonging to that culture. So how are you different from the other person? Okay, so that is one thing that I think could be added to the traditional method of teaching, although it has its own merit. So I'm not against any one of those, but I think that we have to be careful when using each of them in the classroom, not to be confused with how or when we are applying it, possibly. Yeah.
Focus that you put on looking at things through the lens of like different cultures, from like that large perspective of people being from different places, but then being together in one place as one people. The other thing I think about when I think about culturally responsive teaching is, when I think of culture, I think of it as deeper than even just where we come from. And like, you know, our morals, our values all play a part in, you know, how we're raised, all plays a part in the type of culture that we have. And so, you know, even as somebody from the Chicago suburbs, for example, and myself, just because I grew up in this particular area, like it doesn't necessarily mean that I have the same values that the person that lives next door to me has, right? And like, so even though we might look the same or whatever. So I'm curious, when you think about that deep culture that each individual students bring, what are some strategies that educators can use, or if maybe you could share some examples of activities or lessons that could be used in the classroom that actually start to drive at some of those deeper cultures, you know, and not only looking at sort of like the big picture of culture.
Yeah, so I think one of the strategy that we have implemented to focus on this part about who you are as a person more than what your background is, etc. So I think one of the deepest part about this kind of reflection is about, you know, trying to apply your principles in so we have that kind of activity that we do, which is about peer teaching and peer support. So I think that goes a lot into this cultural aspect as well, because we are not thinking about let's say we are thinking about culture being part of your own identity of your beliefs. So I think that could be how you react with the person that you need to help also. So that was part of the peer support that we have. So we saw a lot of difference between different students. So some are more able to help each others. Why? Because actually in Mauritius, we have like a kind of division of in the education framework. So by division, I mean that we have like a couple of institutions that foster for higher level of academic students. So there's a couple of prestigious schools, although they are all public funded schools. And then there are a lot of other schools which are called as regional schools. So the problem with that is that between these two divisions, there is some students and some teachers as well who feel that well, they are at the top. Okay, so we have to bring humble this down. Okay, so trying to find the right balance between these two types of institutions, because if you look at the big picture, okay, so they all form part of the educational framework of Mauritius, but one of them is like the higher level, and then we have the others which are considered lower level. So if you look at culturally responsive teaching and learning in that sense, we feel that there might be less support, okay, but we don't want that. We want there is a code that when we teach students, it's not only content, but we have to teach them how to behave in the society as well. So there's a lot of that kind of education that we hope to achieve through the culturally responsive teaching. So trying to humble them down. Okay, you need to support each other's. But well, some strategies on that we try to employ. I have myself been a teacher for over 4 years. Okay, so the strategies that we have employed. Okay, we did have a few challenges. Okay, to implement them. One of the strategies that we implemented was trying to find the right balance. So we have like one highly academic student with another more lower than him. So the issue was that because of we don't know, maybe it's because of the generational gap, or because of the fading out of cultural values. We don't really know if that is the cause, but we feel that there is some resistance between these students. Okay, and even with some educators. Okay, because they do not want to get involved in that kind of situation. Okay, they prefer their traditional way of teaching and learning, so they leave behind this cultural aspect, which could really reinforce students, but they just leave it like that. Okay, so I think that coming to the strategies, there is something that we could work out, something more solid about it. Yeah.
Because that we look at the students as coming from different cultures, and how do we merge them or meld them into one solid unit, but we also must remember the teachers also come from different cultures, I presume, right? So then how do you go about overcoming these challenges of you have students from different cultures, then you have the teachers from different cultures? Is there like a fixed curriculum that you follow, or a lesson plan, or how do you go about doing this?
Yeah, actually, there is a fixed lesson plan because actually our framework here outsources a little bit from the Singapore example, but also from the international level. So we do have that fixed curriculum already set up, but we do try to bring our own voice to that. Coming to the part about teachers and students being from their different backgrounds. So yeah, so let me just tell you like what goes on in the staff room, okay, as different teachers coming from different backgrounds. Okay, we do have like in Mauritius, actually, we have when we apply for jobs, actually, even in actually most of the different departments, you can say that we do have like a percentage. Okay, so there's a percentage of, for example, Indians, a percentage of Catholics, a percentage of Chinese people, so that they are going to recruit. Okay, because they want it to be balanced. Okay, there needs to be no bias about okay, that type of cultural belonging is more in this sector, etc. So there is that part. We do have a separate form where we fill in our details. Well, we are also allowed not to divulge it. So there is a part where it's written, okay, I want to identify as a Mauritian person. So there's that option also. Now, what happened is that, okay, when because we have been in that kind of society for so long, now it's kind of we don't really identify each other through the different cultures. Okay, well, I know that, okay, my colleague is Chinese, for instance, but it doesn't really affect me, okay, because we have been in that society for so long that when it's time, okay, because it has been here since we have been in school and in the society. Now when we have to go to work, okay, and we have a classroom, okay, so let's say I am from that cultural belonging, and I have a classroom, and most of our classroom also are mixed again, okay, there is no bias between, okay, there is only that kind of cultural belonging person, okay, there is different children from different backgrounds, and so how do we look at it? Okay, we look at them as we are working in the society. Okay, there is no we do have our limitations, so we know that we need not cross these limitations. We know that because in Mauritius, if you start talking about something being a bit off boundary, okay, it's kind of disrespectful, okay, and we don't want, and because we have been in that kind of environment for so long, we do know our limitations. So I won't go around talking about, hey, that culture is like this, or that thing is like that, okay. I would automatically be stopped, okay. I would be told, okay, that's not how we have to act in the society. We have to respect each other's. And even the students, they know it, okay? You will rarely find a student and a teacher being like biased towards each other, something like that, because of their cultural aspect, because that is something that is a bit off boundary, and you might get revoked for that, okay? Because we try to not bring about any sort of differences to a teaching and learning.
That you have. I'm curious then, how do teachers end up creating a classroom environment where it's welcoming and inclusive to all of those students? Like, how do you create that, knowing that there's like really things that are off limits, so that you can create that welcoming and positive environment, especially since you're starting CRT at such a young age, which I love. I wish that we were thinking more about CRT at younger ages. I think we are in the US. I think we're starting to do that way more now than we ever have before. But it sounds like this has been something very traditional for you all. So yeah. So how do they create that in the first place?
So how do we create that is by accepting each other as we are. So I really appreciate my colleague who is from another culture, and vice versa. So there is that respect which goes around, and the same in the classroom. Okay, so one thing that is very common here in Mauritius, we do like to hang out with people different from our own culture. Okay, that is mainly because we want to learn a bit more about them. Okay, so you will very often see that even students, okay, they might belong to culture A, but they're hanging out with another group of cultures. Okay, and most of the time, these kind of friendship, they stay very long, okay? And the same for us as educators, because we have that kind of, even for when I was an educator, okay, you will often find students from another culture. They appreciate me a lot more better in some sort, okay, because they like to hang around and talk about X, Y, Z sort of things. So how do we create that atmosphere is, in fact, by welcoming all. And then we don't really put culture at the forefront. Okay, we do deal with culture, but not by putting it at the forefront. So it's mainly like the background of the classroom. We know it's here, but we don't talk about it right in the face. Okay, we are not going to say, okay, you're this kind of culture, so what do you think about it? Okay, so we are just going to put it in a sort of like, okay, there's this gathering going around, so what do you think about it? So in some sort of hidden like secret way, without much putting strong emphasis on it, because we know that this might cause like, okay, because we are so many here, so it might cause, okay, you're favoring this kind of student, okay, and not my culture, because that might be something that could happen, okay, and we don't want that to happen. So we just accept it, and then we just try to bring everyone, give everyone their own voice. Okay, so if I'm dealing with that student from this culture, I try to make the my best to involve everyone, so that no one feel like marginalized or left behind. So that is some of the things that we do. Okay, even for let's say we have competitions. Okay, so what happened is that this might be something, this was something that has happened in the past. So when we are trying to select people, students for some kind of competition shortlisting, so there might be issues when students feel that, okay, you didn't select me because I belong to maybe a minority group or stuff like that. Okay, so we try to avoid these situations. So what happened is that when we do get these kind of situations, what we do is we shortlist one from each culture, and then we do like a face off. Okay, so it doesn't feel really like we are pinpointing this one or this one. Okay, because that is something that can happen. Okay, in different levels of education in the country.
I really appreciate that you kind of took it in a little bit more about student voice and how student voice plays a role in creating a culturally responsive and inclusive classroom, or how teachers can encourage students to share the perspectives that they have.
Well, in some of the you have a special section which is called as student voice. So they are the representative of students, but not in different cultural groups. Okay, so very different from the cultural responsive teaching. So we have a student voice. We have several representatives which form part of different levels of the education levels. Okay, so we have one for, let's say, year one for year two, etc. Now, how do we deal with this kind of voice? So how do they occur actually? Okay, so in fact, what happened is that the student voice is mostly elected. Okay, not nominated, but mostly elected. Okay, so he or she is elected by a group of the student. Um, the student mass. Okay, and then what happened is that we have these one-to-one meetings with these student voices where they express themselves. They work kind of like a student union. Okay, so the student union, we have it at the tertiary level in Mauritius, but for the lower levels we have only the student voice, and they kind of act as an intermediary between mostly the teachers, or at some point even the administrators. Okay, so they communicate their needs, and the great thing about that is that they do engage a lot in the different events that we have at the school. Okay, so they bring their opinions. For instance, recently we did have an event which was a fundraising, and initially we have set up the agenda that we were going to do this and that. And then the good thing is that the student voice came and they said that, okay, but from the poll that I got from my students, from the students who voted for and against the agenda, we found that there is a couple of modifications that need to be made, and we took that into consideration. Okay, so the good thing is the administrator really appreciate the student voice. So there's a lot of times that their voice get heard, but in some cases as well, for example, postponement of exam, etc. So that is something that needs a lot of persuasion to get really heard. So there's a lot of things that we do consider as well, okay, before considering their voice, be it for convenience of all students or the well-being as well of all students.
Being in more things like climate change are very, very important. And you also mentioned that you have a passion for sustainable development goals, aligned education. Firstly, can you explain what is this sustainable development goals? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, okay. So the Sustainable Development Goal, we do work in collaboration with Africa 2063 Blueprint for the advancement, the future of Africa. So what is the SDG? The SDG is about 17 different goals, which we try to observe to make the world a better place to live in. Okay, so one of them is, which we do focus a lot in Mauritius, is SDG 4 and SDG 11. So SDG 4 is about quality education. So this is a framework that is implemented in the institutional frameworks in Mauritius. So a lot of time when we go for professional development or any quality assurance workshops, okay, this is something that is very much highlighted, okay, because in the education institution in Mauritius, okay, whenever there is this aspect of teaching and learning being done, we are regularly monitored by quality assurance, okay. So there is that part where we want to standardize our education to be on the international level. That is why we observe these SDGs, okay? So SDGs is about Sustainable Development Goal, and you talk about climate change, which is one of the aspects that is part of my research. So climate change, why? Because Mauritius is part of the SIDS, which is Small Island Developing States. So we are like a middle income country, recently part of the middle income country. But you see this very nice background behind me. It's here, but it's in the process of getting endangered. Okay, so we have a lot of climate issues happening. Okay, we have different, because we are a tropical island and we are such a small island, so there's a lot of things that our local policies cannot look locally. Okay, so we have a lot of aids from international countries as well. So this is why we are part of these SDGs, because we get like a lot of, we are being overlooked a lot by international countries. Okay, so we have a lot of these treaties that we sign from different countries. We have the COP, okay, COP 14 and etc. So we have and we are part of the SADC and etc. So this is why we have to observe the SDGs, and you will see it in every like departmental stuff and etc. So for every departments, they have their own SDGs that they have to observe. We have the SDG about gender equality, because in Mauritius, prior to observing the SDGs, we have a lot of inequalities. So there were more men in working than women. So we have to bring that to a balance. We needed to bring that to a balance. So it is part of the SDGs as well. And then we have access to, well, I already talked about quality education, but another one is access to clean water. We have access to sustainable infrastructure, which we focus a lot about, okay? Because we are a country which is quite prone to some kind of issues, okay? We do have our share of unfortunate moments, okay? We do have different levels of in our society. We have poverty levels, we have the super rich, etc. So we try to bring that to a kind of standard balance. So that is why we observe these SDG. Now, coming to the climate change, yes, there is a lot of focus. Why? Because we do face a lot of soil erosion. So while you're seeing this beautiful background behind me, so there is a lot of coastal regions in Mauritius which are faced with coastal erosion. So most of our sand and seas are disappearing. We try to bring that back, okay? So that's why we have a focus in our curriculum for SDG aligned education, okay? So we try to look at the sustainable way of working with our resources, and we try to implement that at different levels. We even have, if I'm not mistaken, in tertiary level, a BSc in sustainable development and then a master's in sustainable development, where we try to find resources which will bring back these beauties to life. Yeah.
Wow, it looks like you really have your work cut out for you in today's world. You have your sustainability development goals. You have your cultural infusion standards as well. So, is there a way that you merge these two together, or are they separate issues that you have to tackle one by one?
In fact, we do try to learn. We try to merge these solutions. Okay, so let me give you one example. So let me start with one of the most worked aspect, which is SDG 4. So SDG 4 is about giving quality education to every students. Okay, so this is one thing that we need to observe, because in Mauritius, education is compulsory until the age of 16. Now, what happened with this is that we have these special aided schools. Okay, because I already so we have that SDG about reducing poverty level. So what happens? So these are two different concepts right now. Okay, so we have one which is education, and then we have another one which is poverty level. Okay, so we need to bring. What happened is that when we try to work on one, automatically we see that there is a kind of change in the other one. Why? Because in fact, all the SDGs are connected to one another. Okay, so we are trying to bring up quality education. What happens? The poverty level decreases because there is more students who are educated and can have a job. Okay, so in that way, even if we are working on one in a silo, it automatically affects the other one. So let's say we are talking about gender equality. Okay, so when we have this issue, okay, when we're trying to bridge this issue about gender equality, so what happens? We also see that maybe quality education will increase because we can have more women in the teaching sphere. Okay, so that might be some factors which are interrelated, although they are distinct ones. Okay, so this is how we try to deal with these issues.
Really fascinating. In the United States, we had something that was more like these SDGs. And I'm just thinking about how we're so huge compared to, other countries around the world, that it makes things really difficult to align. And so it's incredible to me that you can have standards that align to developmental goals in trying to improve not only your own little island, but countries in the world. and still be able to align those with being culturally responsive when you have such a broad amount of people in your country. So I just it's really incredible to me. So thank you so much for coming on and just talking about this, because it's a very different topic than any other topic we've talked about on our podcast so far. So just really incredible. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we close things up? Anything we haven't talked about that you would like to get out there and share with people?
I think one of the things that I would like to talk about, since we are on the topic of culturally responsive teaching and learning. So also good to mention that, well, I already talked about the different activities that we involve to make teaching and learning more culturally responsive. But one of the aspects is about everyone finding their place in the society, which is one of the most important thing in my perspective. So even if you have all these things going around, so you know who you are, you know your place in the society, and everyone accepts you as you are. So I think that is the most important thing that I would like to share during this podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, we do not see enough of that. Thank you so much for being a guest with us and coming on and having this conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk about CRT and SDGs with us. Ghazali, do you have any final words before we close things out today?
Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience to hear somebody speak who's also from an island like mine and facing similar problems, but approaching it, in a slightly different way, perhaps. Yeah, so I think that's very refreshing, and we should have. I like having all this international audience, coming in, and participants and speakers. That is part of what it means to be in a globalized world, and I get to understand your situation and the unique ways you go about tackling that. I think we've learned a lot today.
So I also like to mention that we have a lot of immersion in Singapore. Okay, so yeah, you might just meet someone from Mauritius in your country.
Really, I
But
didn't know that. No. Oh,
yeah.
that's really.
Also, I would like to thank you. Very nice opportunity. I really appreciate it, and yeah, all the best.
Well, thank you. And to all of our listeners, thank you for being here and joining us. I review, share our podcast, because we love to spread the support and the love to everybody, to all educators. If you would like to be a guest on Teachers Talkin', we would love to have you. Please fill out the form that you can find in the show notes. And we are looking for any and all educators. You do not have to be an expert in anything, just passionate about education. Come on and have a chat with us. We have new episodes out every Monday. So thanks again for tuning in today, and stay tuned for more conversations that inspire, empower, and transform education. See ya, everybody.